Let's hear what Garland Nixon thinks about that. He's back. Garland, welcome back after too long to the mother of all talk shows. Beautiful to see you again.
Thank you for
Tell us
thank you for
about
inviting me,
this.
George.
Tell us about this sweetheart deal. I mean, there's sweetheart deals and sweetheart deals. This is a big Valentine's box he's been given, hasn't he? Talk about getting out of jail free.
Yes, it kind of reminds you of the Epstein sweetheart deal in Florida a few years back. Basically, they found a few odds and ends that they could charge him with, that he could walk on, and they could clean this mess up and say, look at this, we went after Hunter Biden, all is fair, and he was held accountable. One of the big questions here, I think that's obvious, is that Hunter Biden did not get any charges relative to the FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act. Laws. They were during the Mueller investigation, all throughout, they were thrown out. Paul Manafort, a number of people were charged with FARA Act violations, but Hunter Biden was never charged, even though it's clear that he was acting on behalf of a number of different foreign companies, governments, et cetera. I would suspect part of that is because of his connections to Joe Biden, that if they show that he was operating on behalf of foreign governments or foreign entities, and then eventually it comes back that the vice president of the United States was receiving some of those funds, that it's going to be a much larger scandal for Joe Biden than it will be for Hunter. So I think part of this was protecting Joe much more so than it was Hunter Biden. He was just a chess piece here, in my opinion.
See, this is one thing I don't understand, Garland, and I thought I knew your system. You're supposed to have checks and balances. You're supposed to have a situation that the president is not all powerful, that the Congress, that the courts are equally powerful, and yet you've got a Republican controlled Congress that appears powerless to the blatantly partisan use of the Department of Justice in this way and in other cases.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here now is reality as opposed to the falsehoods that have been perpetrated about the United States being some kind of a constitutional republic or democracy, which goes by the rule of law. Here, what we see is an empire, and an empire, by its very nature, tends to go by arbitrary application of the law. This is a country that, let's not forget, murdered the president. The CIA killed the president. That same president's brother was looked like he was on the way to winning again. They killed him. So if you look at what our government is doing, if you look at what our intelligence agencies are doing right now, what's going on, I think what we have is the most honest representation of the United States government that we've ever had. In the past, we talked a good game, but what was going on beneath the surface was far different. So we now see what's going on with Donald Trump. It's simply lawfare. They're using the Espionage Act against Trump, against Julian Assange, anyone they can. They are intimidating members of Congress. We can all recall Chuck Schumer talking about the 6 waves from Sunday that the intelligence agents have to go against a sitting president. So in reality, as frightening as it may seem, what we're seeing now is a banana republic being exposed. We're not turning into a banana republic. This is what we've been for many decades.
Yeah, but the exposure is very, very ugly. And they've now got somebody on their trail. There are many of us who have been on their trail, but we were fleas to an elephant. We were a mouse roaring into the wind, as one of our colleagues used to say. But now you've got RFK Jr. with this name recognition, almost priceless name recognition, who is now openly talking about the conspiracy, certainly against his uncle. He seems a bit more cheery about his father, but the conspiracy against his uncle, it's almost like him and Bob Dylan are working in tandem when they are pulling apart this murder most foul. And you're right. A country that can murder its own president in daylight on television is a country that's capable of anything, right?
Yes, and what's important now is not just that RFK Jr. is saying it, but where he is saying it. What is critical now is that we have the existence of very powerful alternative media outlets such as yours. Look at Tucker Carlson is back with literally hundreds of millions of views. So the mainstream media is ignoring RFK Jr. and Cornel West, and even the reality that right now, with all of the attacks on Donald Trump, he is 6 points ahead of Joe Biden. If we had an election today, Donald Trump would beat Joe Biden. So the mainstream media ignores all of these things, but you can find RFK Jr., you can find Cornel West, you can go online. People are migrating away from mainstream media, from propaganda, and they're going to shows like this, Tucker Carlson, YouTube, Rumble, wherever, and they're able to, in very large numbers, find out the truth. And I think that's why we've had the level of censorship and attacks that we've had on alternative media.
For sure, but this is 2023, not 2003. There are, or 1953. There are not many ways to wholly censor. I see that Kennedy has now gone to Rumble. For the moment, Rumble is the byword of free speech. They're never going to be able to stop him, at least not in the foreseeable. The Joe Rogan show, Spotify are allowing him to platform people like yourself, like Max Blumenthal, like Roger Waters and Jimmy Dore and his show and so on. The number of platforms on which we are now launching our ballistics from is increasing and increasingly influential. It's not that long ago, about 3 weeks, we had an audience in 7 days of 3.28 million people. This is unheard of, and they're not going to be able to stop it. When you look at the kind of audiences that MSNBC and even Fox, now that Tucker has gone, it's a death knell for the so-called legacy media, isn't it?
Absolutely. And what's critical here is not just that the events are being reported on alternative media, but how they're being reported on. As an example, Prime Minister Modi is in Washington, D.C. He's here in the States and he's doing a tour. He's going to be speaking to Congress. So the mainstream media just goes over that he's there, the basics. He's going to be talking to Congress. One of the whisper campaigns, one of the things that's being talked about on alternative media is the issue of Kashmir, and I think it was brought out by your coverage about Pakistan, that the neocons are using Ukraine on Russia's border to go after Russia. They're using Taiwan in China to go after China. It is inevitable that an India that aspires to be a global power, the U.S. has overthrown the government of Pakistan, and Kashmir is on their border, and it is a needle. It is poking Kashmir would be like poking someone in the eye with a hot needle, and inevitably that if the Indian Prime Minister pays attention, there's just a matter of time before he's going to be accused of human rights violations. And what do you know? Kashmir is going to need democracy. The U.S. is going to have to pump weapons there to protect them, blah, blah, blah. But those kinds of discussions, which I think need to be had, are starting to arise on social media. I think that's an important discussion.
Yeah, the concern about human rights in India rises and falls in direct proportion to the perceived closeness of India to Russia and China. It's not about morals. I've been talking about Kashmir for 40 years. Nobody wanted to hear me. And now, in the American media, it's a casus belli, it's a stick to beat Modi with.
Yes, there's little doubt. Additionally, we had another one of Biden's, and we're not really sure if it was a gaffe or not. But as I'm sure you know, Secretary Blinken went to China ostensibly to smooth things over, whatever the case may be. He came back with promises that things would get better between the U.S. and China. Within 48 hours, Joe Biden was on giving a speech and referring to the president of China as a dictator, and he was back at the old spy balloon trope again, which has infuriated the Chinese. Now, there are those who suspect that it was the good cop, bad cop game, but I personally believe that, in a nutshell, Joe Biden is not cognitively able to maintain the narrative that his own administration is putting forth, and they may have even told him, "Hey, let's stay away from the issue of China." But Joe Biden got to talking, and now he's started another international row by insulting the president of China immediately after his Secretary of State said, "We're going to respect you, and we're going to try to smooth things out and have a better relationship."
Well, my money's on your theory, not on the idea that it was a good cop, bad cop. I don't think Joe's capable of carrying out that kind of subterfuge. Garland, help me with this, and I'm sure other people. Cornel West started out as the People's Party candidate. He seems to have morphed into the Green Party candidate. Please explain what's going on there, would you?
In a nutshell, one of the things that has happened in the U.S. is that the laws have been changed over the course of history. Started in the early 1900s, where there was I believe, the Bull Moose Party changed into the Progressive Party, and a lot of laws were enacted around the country to make it difficult for parties to get on the ballot in individual states. And the People's Party is very small. They don't have a lot of access to ballots. So it would have been very difficult for Cornel West to have an opportunity to be effective, to get a lot of votes, because maybe a few states he'd get on the ballot. The Green Party is already established, already has ballot access on at least somewhere between 40 and 44 states. They can work on the rest. So I think it was really about ballot access. It was about if he really believes that he has a chance to win, and if he really wants to send the message that he's actually trying to win and he believes in what he's saying, it makes more sense for him to go to a party where he will have legitimate ballot access, rather than simply, be a candidate that's saying all the right things, but when it comes time to vote, that people will not, they'll have to write in candidate or something like that. I think that's what it was about. It was an administrative move more so than anything else.
Now, my friend, your friend, Dr. Stein, Jill Stein, she ran, and she fought a good campaign in the teeth of real vicious, slanderous lies. She was a Kremlin agent and all of that. And she didn't affect the outcome. And the only time I think the Green Party has affected the outcome was when Al Gore was the nominee, when the result was narrow, at least according to the courts that actually decided it. But the Green Party, you could argue, cost Al Gore, a great environmentalist, if nothing else, the victory. Presumably, the Democrats will make the same attack on Cornel West, that he's risking splitting the Democratic base and allowing Donald Trump, presumably, in as president again. How will he deal with that kind of criticism?
Well, the fact of the matter is this, that after 8 years, after 4 years of Joe Biden, there are a lot of people in this country who are concerned not just about politics, but about the existence of humankind. I think what the Democrats are trying to argue is somehow that Cornel West is stealing their votes, but he's running in a different party. So if they're arguing that Cornel West is stealing their votes, they could just as well argue that Donald Trump is stealing their votes. He's not in their party. They do not have the right to claim votes in a party that they don't belong to. Furthermore, Joe Biden is having, every time you turn around, he's having a summit for democracy, a worldwide democracy. Well, a big part of democracy, the major part of democracy is that the voters are informed and have the opportunity to choose. So they're saying we want to reduce the opportunities that the voters have to select a candidate that aligns with their ideological or environmental or whatever the case bend. So the argument is, if you feel that Cornel West is not a good candidate, simply beat him. That's easy enough. It's interesting. I don't hear Donald Trump or the Republicans saying, hey, they shouldn't run. I don't hear anyone else saying this party shouldn't run. This is the law. And if the Democrats have addressed the needs of the American people in a way that the American people see them as their best option, they'll take it. But I think this is an excuse now. They're looking for excuses because I think they recognize that they're going to lose and that they have been politically suicidal over the past several years.
You still think Biden will be on the ballot in 24?
I really don't believe that Joe Biden will be on the ballot in 2024, to be frank. When I see the level of cognitive decline that Joe Biden is experiencing right now, I have had, and many of us have had family members in which we've seen for any number of reasons such cognitive decline, and it tends to work as empires crash, as they say, slowly then suddenly. And I've had family members where I've seen people who have had cognitive issues that continue to go down, and then within a matter of a couple of weeks, it takes a turn. I don't see how Joe Biden will be in a mental condition a year from now to have a debate with Joe Biden when, again, he's wandering around the stage. He's making what people call gaffes, but in fact, they're very serious mental mishaps. And they're not going to be able to call them, what did they say in 2016? Stuttering. It's kind of going to be hard to say he stuttered out, "God save the Queen."
Man. He added, "God save the Queen, man." Thank you very much, Garland. A delight to see you back on our show again.